Good evening, everybody. This is one of the latest points in time I have ever done any kind of a stream, but I figure, hey, I'm up, I'm on the internet, I'm seeing things I want to talk about, might as well hop on the stream and get right into the thick of things here. So, I'm convinced that pretty much any finance related Reddit or a lot of the finance based YouTube channels and such that feature regular people, a lot of them thrive on Schadenfreude, which is a sort of pleasure you get from looking at somebody else's train wreck, someone else's circus, basically their circus, their monkeys, but you're not involved, so you're just an onlooker, and it's this sort of like sick fascination you get when you see somebody else's train wreck going on or somebody else's circus. It's the reason why people watch Jerry Springer back in the day or Maury. They want to see if the baby is or is not the guy's, you are not the baby's father, that kind of thing. But this is really just a thing where I'm thinking tonight about financial Schadenfreude. Okay, now if you browse, like, for example, the personal finance subreddit, like I am right this moment, we see this situation where this person apparently owes $10,000 to the IRS. Now, they received a letter in the mail that they owe $10,000 to the IRS because they did not claim their Robinhood gains and losses on their TurboTax for 2021. It is now 2023, so this is 2 years ago. And they didn't do that because it was complicated and they did not know how and want to know if there's any way to fix it. So, my goodness. So, where to begin? So, $10,000 in unpaid taxes on Robinhood gains and losses would mean something to the tune, if this person was doing short-term trades on Robinhood, of less than a year in length, which is pretty common for that platform. Well, what we've got here is a person who basically, if they're owing $10K in taxes on that amount, and we assume they're in like the 22% bracket, we're talking about somewhere in the neighborhood of $40,000 to $50,000 worth of short-term capital gains in that year of trading. So basically, this person had tens of thousands of dollars in gains that were taxable from their Robinhood account, but still were too cheap to spend a couple $100, maybe $300. I don't know. I forget what my CPA bill was, but basically they could have hired a CPA. This is an actual, real, legitimate tax accountant who knows like the tax code, and it's their job to prepare people's taxes and file their taxes and give tax advice. Instead of hiring someone like that for $200-300, whatever it might have been, they instead decided to go with TurboTax to save that little bit of money, and now probably owe interest and penalties that are probably a good amount higher than what they would have had to pay to get their taxes done correctly the first time. Not to mention, they still may need to redo their taxes to make sure that the amount is correct, because this is just, kind of what the IRS thinks the amount is based on the information they submitted and what I think is probably the 1099 DIV that got missed. But who's to say that the guy didn't make other mistakes on this TurboTax thing that didn't get caught? Like this dude needs a CPA like 2 years ago, but as I say, the best time to do something is yesterday. The second best time is now. So hope this guy gets his head squarely out of his patootie and gets that CPA. Now, another example of financial Schadenfreude. The Caleb Hammer YouTube channel. He also has a subreddit, by the way, for fans of the YouTube channel. I definitely, here's the thing with Caleb Hammer. You see one of his videos, you've kind of seen them all, but just like with, Maury or whatever, yeah, when you've seen one reaction to, that the paternity test can only go one of two ways. It either is or isn't the baby's father or whatever. But, most of his audits come in different spectrums of bad, right? So you've got bad and worse for the most part. I don't think anybody's ever come on there and had like a really great situation, except for I think there was like one famous YouTuber on there that's like a millionaire, and his score was obviously good, right? But the regular people that he has on, typically speaking, they're deep in debt. Charge everything on credit cards, spending is out of control, and they just, make poor career choices in a lot of cases, don't do what would be pragmatic and make the most money and, help, increase the size of the shovel. Instead, they, either want to be influencers or entrepreneurs or whatever, and in some cases think they're above just going and like getting a dang job, just doing whatever entry level, right? So in this instance, right, this is another guy like owes the IRS $63K. Once again, get a CPA, people. A CPA is so worth it. So a little anecdote from my personal life on why you need to get a CPA. So one time, I visited an H&R Block. Okay, someone near and dear to me was either dropping off or picking up their tax stuff right from H&R Block, and I thought, hey, maybe I'll start using them. I was younger. And, I have a CPA, but, everybody seems to go to H&R Block. So I was curious, and I asked a question about, something involving moving between states and, if it would overly complicate matters to have two different incomes in two different states within the same tax year, like if they had an idea of how that would affect my tax situation, or if that was something they could deal with. And honestly, all I got was like the blankest stare that basically I got looked at like I was one of those 9-foot aliens that's landing in the backyards of people in Las Vegas, apparently, and didn't really get much feedback other than that. And so, and then so I went and I headed over to my CPA's office and pitched the same scenario to him, and he assured me that he has lots of clients that do what I was talking about, and that it wouldn't greatly affect my situation, and that they stay up to date on the tax codes in both the states that I was discussing, and that it wouldn't be too difficult for them to navigate, and assured me basically that it wasn't going to result in some gigantic tax bill at the end of the year. So that's just a little anecdote. The person I was with actually switched to to the CPA after that. Don't know what they're doing nowadays, but just a fun little thing, that little thought exercise. And what really the difference between those big tax mills like H&R Block or is Jackson Hewitt still a thing? Anyways, the difference between those guys and a CPA is they are just basically taught how to enter information from boxes on forms into boxes onto software, essentially. And as far as like the actual like code itself, or how changing one of those inputs might change the outputs, if you're talking about the next tax year or something, they're not really qualified to do that. It was probably dumb of me to even ask that question of somebody that works there in the first place, but of course, these companies like TurboTax and HR Block and Jackson Hewitt, etc., they tout themselves as tax experts, but the people you're dealing with generally are not like actual CPAs and not really experts in any real sense when it comes to the tax code. So I personally just can't say enough good things about... And a CPA actually usually ends up being cheaper as far as the actual tax prep goes. I mean, there might be some variance there, but I have a friend who used to go to H&R Block as well, switched to a CPA, and the fee for the prep actually ended up being not like a ton less. It wasn't like a 50% discount or anything, but it was like there was like a small difference, maybe like $20 or $30 cheaper or something in his case. So again, it's like, it's not as though there's some kind of cost savings or anything. I mean, other than the fact that like maybe some people feel good about it being a name brand or something. Okay. Understand. But just because it's the name brand doesn't mean it's the best. Think of it like one is like some kind of name brand store-bought cookie, and the other is an artisan crafted macaroon. Okay? Now, honestly, this entire subreddit of personal finance is full of this financial Schadenfreude. Now, Caleb Hammer's videos are like usually pretty close to an hour, and they're much the same, but in a lot of cases, I have trouble sitting through the whole hour because it's like once they start going, you kind of know where it's headed. They're going to get a Hammer financial score of like 1 or 1.5. But these subreddits, a lot of times you never know what you're going to get. It's like a box of chocolates a lot of days. Now, a lot of the questions are boring and situations are boring, but you get every once in a while HE double stock. How the HE double hockey sticks do you ever get ahead? Okay. So, this is one I actually responded to because I think a lot of people would relate to something like this, okay? The poster writes, I, 30 female, am just frustrated. I don't understand how to even begin to move forward and get ahead. Money is the worst, she exclaims. I am at a big adult job now and make $65K, which is the most I have ever made. It's awesome, and I love my job. It does keep me busy, but overall, it's great with good people. Every month, I pay $3,000 to bills, rent, childcare, utilities. This leaves me with $400 to $500 every paycheck, which is the 15th to 30th. So this is they get paid twice monthly instead of every 2 weeks. I know it seems like a lot, but it's not. I have a husband, 41 male, who is graveyard, meaning probably works graveyard shift. And I would assume this is maybe beneficial in their situation because maybe they can save some on childcare. Doesn't make much, gets paid weekly, $450 to $550 a week, and a toddler, 4 male, who takes a lot of time and money, obviously. Well, obviously, maybe not. Car payment is auto, take out $288, and second one I try and pay $350 so we aren't paying $680. I'm not sure what that means. They try to pay they have 2 car payments maybe and try to pay 1 on each paycheck, so they're not paying the entire car payment in one paycheck or something. I don't know. The wording on that's a little weird. I've had to take out a payday loan, and it's been eating at me. Credit cards are maxed out for gas and food, and it's hard to pay them and not use them. I feel like I'm drowning. We spelling it correct, barely have $15 to $20 in our account after everything. I guess my question is, does it ever get better? What am I doing wrong to have it so near death every month? What in the world can I do better? I was thinking of a second job, but then I would never be with my kid or sleep. I feel so torn. I think I just need some personal advice on how to make it work. Thanks. Now, what didn't get addressed here is what the minimum, what the balances and minimum payments of their debts are. Advice is impossible to give in a situation like this without that, but that's just the arithmetic. Something that I think people don't often think about is finances and money, especially when it comes to like household spending. It's two things. It's arithmetic, which the arithmetic itself is relatively simple, and anyone can do it. And second is behavior, and the behavior is the part that's hard, okay? Because anybody can do the arithmetic and create a budget in theory on paper, assuming that their income and expenses are not wildly divergent to where their expenses outpace their income by some like ridiculous amount, right? Most people are just kind of like walking along this kind of fine line, tottering on the edge of financial ruin. But in actuality, there's most likely somewhere in here where there is probably a strategy or way out without being necessarily even too extreme. Now, there's some advice in here. Now, what I personally had said, because I replied to this at some point as well. I don't believe I'm anywhere near the top. I got to it kind of late. But what I said was something to the effect of, because the person legitimately seems like they don't understand. They don't even understand what information they need to provide in order to give somebody a starting point on how to help them. Which this is normal on here, right? People have to ask all these clarifying questions in the comments a lot of the time because the person bringing it and bless them for being so open with their situation and like admitting that they need help, because that's perhaps the first and most important step. But they don't know the things that the people that would try to help them would need to know in order to be able to help them. That's how far off they are. So part of it is ignorance maybe on the numbers, but I pointed out simply that the payday loan and the credit cards being maxed out, in order to really help in a sustainable long-term way, we have to know how you got there, right? Like, when did spending on the credit card beyond our means start to look like a good idea or like the only way? Is that because we didn't have an emergency fund? Is not, and some people like to say that not having an emergency fund is in and of itself an emergency, because that ends up being the thing that triggers the first round of maxing out credit cards. Oh, but then suddenly we can't both pay our other bills and make the credit card minimum payments because they're due now, but payday isn't until Friday. So then, we take out a payday loan. And unfortunately, once you cross that bridge, that cycle is extremely hard to break because of the interest rates involved. And I would venture to a guess that they are losing hundreds a month to interest, which when they barely have $15 to $20 left in their account after everything, imagine going from that to having even just like $300 or $400 left at the end of everything if they didn't have all that interest going out. To them, that would feel like that would probably feel like a major victory in and of itself. If they were able to do that for a couple months, they would at least not be in that subsection of Americans that couldn't afford a $400 emergency. And this is exactly, the boat that a lot of people are in. The stats we went over in our the last time we streamed about, what I called the financial matrix, somewhere between a third and 2/3, depending on which set of statistics and whatever you go off of. The Fed data, I think, was only good through 2021, but there was a survey done, an online survey, only polled 1,100 people, that said it's closer to 2/3 could not afford a $400 emergency without going into debt or, receiving a gift or something else along those lines, right? So credit card, payday loan, etc. This is exactly who falls into that. And, this is a person who makes $65K, and which I think is probably before tax. And with the husband's $450 to $550, I'm assuming that's after tax. So, so before tax, call that, I don't know, $700, $750 a week, something maybe like that. Hard to say. But I think combined, they're probably close to right around a low six-figure income before taxes, if I'm reading that situation right. Yet $20 left in their account at the end of the month after all the bills are paid. It's amazing. Maybe we should see if they comment further on how they got here. Payday loan and car payments are obscene for what you make. Get out of both yesterday. Okay, that's easy enough to say, but you don't tell them how. This advice is somewhat frustrating. So, depends how, what the interest rates are, what the remaining loan balances are, how underwater they are on those loans. Now, this person pointed out what I just said. Okay. Yeah, they debate that back and forth. You're spending $700 a month in car payments. That's where your money's going. Yeah, for 2 cars, that's not actually that much. But yeah, ideally, you're buying, you're saving up and buying a used car for a few $1,000s in most cases, and not, financing. But gosh, I wonder what the interest rates are on those car notes. Really, really wish all the information was condensed where we can see it. We would actually have to really hunt this. But yeah, it's truly rough. But I think, a lot of people, if you browse this, that's the kind of thing that gets the most traction. The boring stuff of which option should I choose in my 401k, doesn't really get anything. But when people start, coming up with different ideas when people start talking about their debt situation or how badly in the hole they are, man. I'm thinking about taking out a personal loan to pay for $15,000 of debt. All right, so you're going to take out debt to solve your debt. Sweet. All right. $11,000 in credit card debt, $3K in auto loans, 29% APR for the credit cards. could get 15K at 9%. Man. Some people think that a zero APR card is better than a consolidation. I mean, geez. But the thing I'm worried about is they're talking about, using a personal loan to pay off this, big credit card balance and consolidate it to have a lower interest rate, whatever. But man, like, where's the discussion of how you got 11,000 on as a balance on those credit cards? That's the thing. Remember, this is arithmetic and behavior. The arithmetic, per the arithmetic, the personal loan to consolidate, it's better. But if the behavior hasn't been addressed, you could end up with the personal loan and then a balance on these credit cards again in no time. Yeah, I think, and that's the part that's difficult. I mean, and I think that's why like a Dave Ramsey or someone is so successful in terms of getting a certain subset of people, at least, to change their behaviors and have such good results. Because I think they've got the mentality part of it, right? Some people require this very rigid black and white set of rules to follow, where it's basically got to be black and white. Debt bad, cash good, right? So if somebody just operates off of that, sort of dichotomy, they'll end up not using credit cards because debt bad. In fact, credit cards bad, even if you don't carry a balance. They say credit cards bad. Basically, anything that could even start to open the door to tempt you into consumer debt. So, credit cards gone. They don't do car notes, and the only debt that they will tell you you're allowed to have is a mortgage on like a primary residence. And any other real estate you want, if you can't afford it cash, well, you shouldn't be buying it, basically. And because of that very, very rigid approach, people that require a disciplinarian in their life to structure it for them, that can't be disciplined and deliberate about individual small decisions, they tend to do well with that more heavy-handed authoritarian look. It works for a lot of people and has done a lot of good because it simplifies the behavior. If it's like, oh, well, I have to say no on this because the program says say no on this, right? They need some type of higher authority essentially dictating to them. And in that case, it's that program, the baby steps or whatever that they follow. It's, if they view it as an absolute, which I think is probably why they do so much mixing of like religion in with their advice and with their company culture and such over there. I think because the people that go for that style of thing probably, I think that there's a reason why those two things work to have the effect they do for the people that buy into the program. We'll just say that. But it's the behavior aspect that they've got down. They know how to get the desired behavioral changes to get the positive result. Because honestly, to have the discipline to have all that credit available and never just kind of spend beyond your means, go out and blow it, because it's spendable money even if it's more than what you actually have in the bank. So it's easy to get into that mess. Yeah, they've got a lot of different whole life insurance. Worth it? So, no. Pretty much if you need life insurance, get a term policy and use the 20 or 30 years or however long it lasts to invest in other investments. You don't need your life insurance policy to have cash value, okay? The point of the term life insurance, which is way cheaper than whole life, is that if something should happen to you before you can adequately build out your finances and build up a substantial amount of assets, etc., while there are people who are counting on you to do so, they will have something there to replace your income while they get things figured out. That's the purpose of life insurance. Life insurance isn't and shouldn't be considered an investment, okay? So let's see what advice people gave him on whole life insurance. This person gave him the standard advice. And, on personal finance, a lot of the advice will tend to be very similar. It's pretty much accepted that whole life is not the way to go. And it's pretty ABC. But the fact is, most people are never in a position to use this standard ABC numerically optimal advice in the first place. So even that would differentiate someone from the crowd. Like I say, you can't beat the crowd by being the crowd. So already just by putting yourself in a position to use the very, very cookie cutter standard advice, you're already actually quite far ahead of the average crowd. You're ahead of the can't afford a $400 emergency, can't afford a $1,000 emergency. You're way ahead of that crowd. But yeah, $300 a month for 55 years would grow to $1 million with an annual return of 4.9%. I mean, 4.9% I don't even know if that beats current inflation. I mean, long-term inflation, sure, but yeah. If they were to invest into a 7% annual return, they'd end up with $2.3 million. Now, 7% is still quite conservative. For the last 40 years, the S&P has averaged 9.5%, 10%, somewhere in that general ballpark. I mean, maybe the whole world stock market has been something more like 7 or 8%, and so they went conservative with it. But yeah, look at that difference between 4.9% and 7%. 1 million versus 2.3 million over the course of the person's lifetime. That's crazy. Because a lot of people would say, I mean, that's just a couple percent. What's the big deal? It is a big deal over a long enough period of time. That's why when I talk about investing, I want to look for things that are undervalued, because the lower the price you pay relative to the future stream of cash flow, the higher your return. If I can get an 11% return instead of an 8 or 9% return on something, because I got it when the fundamentals showed me it was undervalued over a long period of time, of decades, that will make a big difference in what my returns are for the life of the investment. No, whole life is not worth it. Better with term life and index fund investing. Yeah. So they usually like things like SPY on here, from what I remember. I used to be on this a lot more than I am today. But, I know all the greatest hits of personal finance, r/personal finance. So, yeah, whole life is something that your insurance salesman, who pretends to be a financial advisor, they will probably push it pretty hard for you, tell you that it's a good idea. But yeah, term with conservative index-based ETF investments would actually do better, like 99% of the time. Any other interesting ones on here? Mortgage lender failed to pay property tax out of escrow by deadline. Wow, that seems like a spicy one. It's already locked. Yikes. Cancer diagnosis. That's a rough one. Neighbor upside down on rent. Wonder why somebody's asking for advice for their neighbor. That's a little weird. Brother got a 500% interest loan. That's obviously a payday loan. Got it through Credit Karma. Oof. My father entered my social security information into a scam site. Wow. That's rough. Really, really scarce on details, but father fell for a scam and deleted the link for the scam in his browser history. Why the hell would he do that? The Social Security office is closed. I see that there's a credit protector or stuff. Freeze your credit with the big three. Freeze your credit and the guide to do so. So this is actually interesting. So I definitely freeze my mine. So basically freezing your credit means that hard pulls on your credit report can't be done, which stops people from, say, taking out a loan in your name fraudulently, because somebody will go to try to pull your credit report. They'll get a thing saying, oh, this person's credit is frozen. We can't open a new thing. So basically, if somebody does get your sensitive info, it becomes very challenging them to actually use it for nefarious purposes if your credit is frozen. The places, when you have it frozen, they'll send you these pins, and basically to unfreeze it temporarily, to say you need to take out a loan, a mortgage, a car note, open a new credit card, whatever the case might be. Essentially, to do so, you would have to temporarily unfreeze your credit. It's probably a pretty good idea if you think that your data's ever been caught in a breach, compromised, or whatever. But it could become a big hassle if you ever lose track of those pins that you use. So, I mean, to each his own. I know. We'll just say that I've had some potential breach exposure myself, and the credit protection stuff that you have to potentially pay for, that they offer you for free for like a limited time or whatever. Well, that's great. They'll give you credit monitoring for 12 months for free. It's like, okay, but like, what happens after 12 months? Because like, you can't unbreach the information. So the fact that they can get away without like giving you protection and monitoring for life after they breach your personal stuff is an absolute joke, but that's the reality of the situation. So, ladies and gentlemen, beware of scams, but if you have suspect your information has been breached, do whatever you can to lock your stuff down and get control over it, because it's probably getting sold on the dark web in giant batches for like 83 cents as one of thousands. So, ladies and gentlemen, that honestly is what I had today regarding financial Schadenfreude. Also, please use a CPA. Be safe at tax time. If you're watching this on YouTube, I encourage you to subscribe to the channel. Also, give me a follow on Twitch, where I originally live streamed this content. Make sure that you thumbs up it so that the algorithm will give it all the love possible. And hop onto our Discord. I'll link that in the description below as well, along with the Twitch account and yada yada. Take it easy, everyone. Have a wonderful and safe weekend. And I am signing off for now.